Where did Udit go?
Wake up! Wake the fuck up, employees! That's the midnight oil to burn.
Nice.
Oh my
No
god.
Cyberpunk in November for you all, boys.
What's up, guys? We are back again with this podcast. We had a blooper intro, but that's fine. No one will see that. It's just Arnab. You just see Arnab's laughter around that. But yeah, we had 1 week miss because Durga Puja was happening, and there's no way I can record anything while that's happening because there's a panel right outside my house. And so we're back with episode 10. Arnab is here, and where is Udit? Where did Udit go?
Wake up! Wake the fuck up, employees! That's the midnight oil to burn.
Oh my
No
god.
Cyberpunk in November for you all, boys.
I mean, it was a good trick or treat, right? Except we didn't get anything.
I
The
mean,
real horror.
they gave us the trick.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, lots of news this week from the last 2 weeks, I guess. Mostly it's about Cyberpunk getting delayed again. This is the third delay. Also around the fact that there's a lot of stuff going around CDPR right now, and then there's Facebook stuff today that we have to talk about, which is basically Facebook VR, Oculus doing whatever it is doing. And then we have one of our favorite topics since the Acid Cast days, which is gambling in video games and EA.
Especially by EA.
Yeah, EA.
It's tradition at this point.
And of course, at the end, we'll talk about the games we played. I've been playing a lot of games lately. I'm guessing these two have been as well. So yeah, let's start. How have you guys been doing? How have your holidays and Durga Puja, Dashera, whatever is happening on your side of the world with it? How have you celebrated? I know how Arnab celebrates, so let's start with you.
Yeah. Boring as stuff from my
With it,
end.
what have you
Me?
done? Yeah, holidays.
Well, nothing. We just since it was Halloween. I mean, Durga Puja is not really something that's big here in Bangalore.
You guys celebrate
Dashera
Dashera, yeah.
Dashera was big. I thought I'd get some good night's sleep, but people were louder playing poker all night long. Dude. Oh my god! I guess that's when you realize you're getting old. Is when you cannot stand your neighbors just being loud. But nothing much, man. Just hung out with a few friends, like met them over. Maintain a distance of a small group. But other than that, nothing. As far as Halloween is concerned, as you know, we've been playing Phasmophobia all throughout. And just last week, we were hosting watch parties and watching one horror movie every day. And
One
yesterday
horror
just
movie
watched,
every day. Holy shit.
yes.
Okay.
Yesterday, though, we watched two. It was The Shining and Doctor Sleep back to back, which was one compendium. So that's how last week was. It's pretty chill. So yeah, October was my favorite month of the year. So that went
Wow.
as well as
Okay.
it every year.
I mean, to be fair, the bar isn't very high to be the favorite month of the year.
Especially this year, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I'm talking about this year. What have you been doing, Bawal? How have your holidays gone?
Uh, I don't know. I've been spending it inside the house as always. I guess. I mean, I've been inside the house for like what, 8 months now, or 9? I don't even know anymore, man. It's like the days are blurring in. The weeks are the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't even remember the days or like. But games have been nice for like the year it's been. Like I don't know, man. I mean, I think the developers can do better, except they're not.
Do you notice
yeah.
Udit? I asked him, what have you done at the holidays? He ends with, the developers could have done better.
Yeah, see,
I'm surprised. Like, what are you saying?
yeah, see, I spend my days inside, so I expect them to give me some good stuff, right? And they don't.
What is this
Makes
Cyberpunk
it bad.
cult? Anyway.
Developers being able to spend any time with the family so that they could give you products and be grateful for what you have.
Uh,
I'm slowly trying to push the topic towards that. Like, I'm really
anyway,
excited to talk about this. My holidays have just been like that. I was waiting for Cyberpunk to get delayed, and it did. I don't know why.
anyway, I'll just we before we move on to the first topic, I've just spent the holidays at home. I generally spend Durga Pujas at home. Like most of the holidays, I tend to go back to home in New Year's. That's probably the only time I celebrate. Um, but this time was very quiet, even for my standards. There's like barely any, like there were noises last week because of which I couldn't do the podcast, but it just seems so mild everywhere, right? Online, offline, everywhere. People just Durga Puja is like one of the biggest celebrations for those who don't know in Calcutta. Like the entire city comes out, literally. Everyone's is on the streets. They're going pandal hopping. This time it was very tame in comparison. I don't remember. I don't think Kolkata has been this tame in a long time during the Durga Puja festival.
I think I personally I think it's nice that
Yeah,
people are
I
actually
mean,
stay. I mean,
of course.
it wasn't exactly like completely nice. Like you had the High Court intervening, to keep people from visiting the pujas. But yeah, overall, I think people are
Yeah, yeah.
getting more conscious about what's going on in the world and not putting themselves in the way of danger. So yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah,
And
so
it,
that's the thing. It's been very mild, pretty nice in a
yeah.
way because it's saving lives, but it's very surreal also to see, stuff
Yeah.
happening this mild. But whatever. Let's go into the first topic, which is basically Cyberpunk getting delayed. This is the third delay. Lots of stuff happening around it. Now it's coming in December 10th, and there's a lot of noise around the fact that devs are crunching, and basically what happened is they delayed the game. Then Jason Schreier tweeted, I'll give you a basic timeline, right? They delayed the game again to December 10th. No one expected that. Everyone was obviously slightly angry, both the gamers and the devs, because they have to crunch as well, stuff like that. Jason Schreier tweets out saying, a worker has developer just reported clocking in 100-hour week. For those of you who don't understand, I put out a status saying this. If you work 11 hours every day, that's still 77-hour week, right? That's 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. at night, 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night. If you work every day for 7 days, that's 77 hours. That's not even close to 100 hours. And this is one developer. Who knows what the other guys are going through, right? Then in retort to this, this CEO, I believe, of the CDPR basically talks to the investors and says there's barely any crunch. It's not happening. The departments who are supposed to be done with their work are done with their work, and there's barely any crunch. Basically, that's what he said, which makes sense because art departments don't tend to have crunch last moment, right? The last moment crunch is generally on the people who are doing the programming, bug fixing, and stuff like that, which is like, you're right when you say that, but that's not what we are saying to begin with, right? No one said the art department is on crunch. Huh?
It's called lying by omission.
Yeah, no one exactly said the art department is on crunch. Again, they're trying to make the basic audience gullible, people who do not understand design at all, I guess, but also the investors. And immediately after this, PC Gamer basically took this investor call, made it into an article, said this, like, CDPR says there's barely any crunch, something along those headlines. And because of their headline article, the devs inside CDPR basically like, what the fuck, right? And then the CEO writes back an email to the devs saying, I am basically, again, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. There's definitely crunch going on. And that's where we are at right now. Basically, what happened is CDPR CEO ended up apologizing to the devs who are actually doing crunch because he said there was no crunch. And we are probably going to get the game on December 10th.
If we are lucky. If we are
According
lucky.
to CDPR, it's they're not, and I quote, they're not comfortable with the date, but they're confident. I think that means there will probably be bugs in the game in launch, and that's fine. Honestly, they're like, just keep the bugs, like just release it if you want to. I understand the perspective. So I before I give it over to you guys, I'll just say this. At this point, I understand, the management ka pressure. They probably said this game was going to come out 14th of April, and immediately after Keanu Reeves announced it last year, they were like, okay, no, it's probably not coming out by then. Then they delayed it to November, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
No,
they
I think no, it was September.
they
September was.
delayed it to September, and then immediately this year they were like, no, it's not happening September as well, so it delayed it to November again, and then this is the third delay, which is happening, which is December 10th. So yeah, investors are probably pissed. CDPR also related to this lost about 25% of the stock.
Yeah, they're taking major hits because apart from Witcher 3, they have made other games, but they've not been as big scale or as brought in
Right,
as much
right,
revenue
right.
as any
So
close to.
Gwent, the CDPR has other games like the standalone Gwent multiplayer game and the Thronebreaker, which is a great game, by the way. Not a lot of people
Both
have played.
both both of those games are nice actually.
Thronebreaker itself is very nice and a unique
Yeah.
take on a card game. I have never seen a single player based, like properly single player card game, and this is great. Like if anyone wants a good story and a card game, Thronebreaker is great by any margins. But obviously it's a very niche audience, so it didn't take off very well. And they're hard. Like I can understand why it's happening, but just release the game. What do you guys think? I think they should just at this point release the game with the bugs, and if necessary, they should also just delay the PS4 and Xbox One X, which seems to be the consoles holding them off, just 3 months, and just take your time and just do it. And they should just put these game out. What do you guys think about all of this?
Firstly, as a statement, I just want this game to be released so that we are done talking about it. But so much of this I have issue with in the management, right? Like, at what point? Uh, the thing is, I understand that there was an issue with the cross gen, but this was an issue that you should. So this was an issue that should have ideally been planned for, considering that you were developing for the current gen when the game started out, right? It's not a game that was in production in 2018 or 2017. It
Yeah.
started very early, 2013, and I think they were starting development on the PS4
When
and the Xbox.
the pre-production started, Xbox One and PS4 were announced. Actually,
What?
when pre-production for Cyberpunk started was, I think, 2012, and
Right.
Xbox One and PS4 were announced in 2013. So to
Right.
give perspective.
Right. But obviously, internally, they were probably planning it for the next gen, for the PS4 and Xbox
Yeah, yeah.
going forward. So to then develop this as a cross gen and say that you're having problems with the
With the gen,
previous
you
gen,
always had it with you, right?
huh?
With the
What?
gen that they always had to begin with, they have
Yeah.
problems with.
Yeah, I find something fishy. I don't want to make judgments. Obviously, I don't know how the development goes on that scale.
Hmm.
But if you are making a hard line, and people say, right, this is an issue that is happening across the board because there's pandemic. But yes, but CDPR isn't the only company developing games, and not the only company developing multi cross platform games right now,
Hmm.
right? If you announce that you went gold,
Hmm.
right, that was your announcement,
Hmm.
right, which means that the game is ready and it is playable.
Hmm.
To then double back and then say no, it's because there's this gen and there's problem and a bar for quality is really really high. then I have an issue with why were you making these release dates in the first place? If you had such qualities, then you should have planned things accordingly and say our game is not ready. This is not a release that we're comfortable with. We will tell you when it is out.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, see, that's the thing, right? Because you were going into this game by saying we're going gold, and then the 6 week crunch happened before that, and everybody was like, it's just for what was it, 6 days or 6 weeks? I'm not sure, right?
It
uh,
was a month, I think.
you promised
The
that
initial
this is
delay.
the last stretch.
No, so they announced mandatory crunch, I guess, a month back. And this mandatory crunch was supposed to go on till the end of December anyway, according to Jason Schreier. Right? Even if the
Right.
game had come out according to the current timeline, which is November 10th, apparently the crunch would have continued till almost the end of December, at least till before Christmas anyway.
That,
Um,
that's obviously true. That always happens. Like whatever they say, whatever you say to the public, it's always a lot more goes on under the scene. So I'm totally that totally makes sense to me. But where are your priorities? So because it's always the thing is key when you're developing for consoles, you ideally always uh, develop it for the current gen, any cross gen title that you're going on, right? It's
mhm,
usually that the current gen is more developed, right? it's
mhm,
it's it's far more thing that you spend time, and then you probably focus on developing for the next gen. Again, I don't know the details of this thing,
mhm.
but I am not comfortable with the idea that it was the last gen that was holding it back, the release dates, that they were running into bugs. Obviously, there are generational gaps that happen, but it's not sitting well with me
So,
personally.
so to give you my understanding, uh, I think it's the last gen probably, but I think it's also because of the fact that whatever. So Jason Schreier, I've been following him lately quite a lot regarding these topics, and a lot of people are right now saying that he's biased to against CDP or whatever. That's not true. He's basically been the top gaming investigative reporter for quite some time now.
One of the
For the
funniest things
last.
I read was when they were like, this is the same guy who told that Naughty Dog employees were paid for and stuff like that. So he's not a reliable source. He has some bias. And I think Jason Schreier was the same guy who reported on Naughty
Yeah,
Dog's.
yeah. So that was in my basically status where I talked about the 100-hour week. Someone basically commented, I believe, that Jason Schreier is just biased towards CDPR. He didn't speak out about Naughty Dog when they were also crunching, which is hilarious because, like you said, he was the guy who broke that news to begin with. He's also the guy who broke the news in BioWare.
BioWare news.
He
Yeah.
Yeah.
broke. He's the guy who broke the news in a lot of places. He's one of the big reasons why Ubisoft had to change their current top management because of his reporting. He's also been reporting. Here's the thing: I've been following Jason Schreier since way back in 2013 because he's the guy who's been leaking Assassin's Creed games all the time. So any Assassin's Creed game supposed to come out in the near future, he'll probably know about it, right? So yeah, that. So I don't think he's biased, but he's been saying a lot of things around this. One of the things that he mentioned was the fact that basically the top management were basically spending a lot of time in pre-production, right? And the game basically towards when it went into post-production, it was already unrealistic deadlines, which is the April date,
That's always.
which is believable, I think, because uh, whatever we saw in probably 2018 was a vertical slice in all intents and purposes. Like that was probably a small section of the game that was playable, and obviously not the entire game was playable. They probably had the most idea, but it probably needed since then about 3 years to make a game that is done. We are obviously not 3 years in, we are just 2 years or so in, right? So again, this is based on speculation from the fact of whatever Scryer reported, and he's been known to be very thorough with his research. So
Aman,
I tend to believe that.
I kind of agree with you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Here's where I think that the last gen. Here's where find issue with the last gen thing is because the first set hard deadline release that we got was April, right? Which was confirmed. That falls into the current gen territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as and when they delayed it, I think they realized that it would not come before the next gen are released. So they probably that's how
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hyped up
Yeah,
that
so
the movie.
I completely agree with you. When they were initially going to put it out on October, April 14th, the game hadn't gone gold. The game went gold just some time back, right?
Right.
So the content was probably not fully playable, and there were probably progression stopping bugs and whatnot till then. And when they delayed it, they were like, okay, we are delaying it. Why not just release it with the next gen version as well? So more work piled on top of the work that they already had, which is where I believe someone like Rockstar takes a very smart approach, and they are just so confident in their game selling regardless, right? Of look at how GTA 5 released. They released in PS3 and Xbox 360 on 2013. Then they came out in 2014 in PS4 and Xbox One, and then in 2015, the PC version came.
Right.
CDPR cannot delay the PC version that long because CDPR is famously known as a PC centric company, right? So they'll
Right.
probably get a lot of backlash if they do it, and their entire GOG storefront is very PC centric, so they have a lot of reason to not delay. But they could have easily delayed the console version, I believe, right? And
Definitely.
I think they would have still uh, uh, gotten a lot of sales, in fact. And I completely understand them having issues with last gen. Of course, it's last gen. It's like, look at the RAM and just the graphics capabilities of last gen. It's a 2013 stuff, right? And these guys are trying to do some very dense environments, some very vertical things that haven't been done before. Like the depth in this game is just not something that you would see in something like GTA 5, for example, right? In GTA 5 we go and shoot and there may be big explosions, but this has big explosions plus a lot of data going back in the back end because of the RPG centric nature of the game, right? So yeah, um, at this point I just feel bad, honestly, not just for the devs, for the management as well. I mean, I don't want to be that guy who's like being like, yeah, management is having as bad as the devs. No, they're not. Okay, the devs are definitely having a worse time. But I can understand that even the management is stuck between a rock and a hard place at this point.
It's
It's
like they were
very evident.
for their own good. It kind of feels like one of those things, right? Where uh, it's like a man's grasp exceeds his reach, kind of thing, or a man's
Yeah,
reach,
something
whatever.
like
I
that.
forgot the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh, Bolo?
do you guys think it will come to December 10th is what I want to ask. Like, I guess.
I leave that to Arnab.
See, the part of me that wants the game to come out thinks that yeah, it should come out in December, but the part of me that is like an asshole, it's like things like it should get delayed, like just to see how far this entire thing can go on. But I mean, if I was a part, like I was in the management team, I would want the game to come out as soon as possible because they can't afford any more delays after this.
Here's the
They've already lost. I think like people have already like canceled quite a few pre-orders and all of that. Like they have lost that a part of it,
I,
and if they delay it further, it will create more backlash, and this game can't afford it anymore after this.
So here's
Like
the
it's already
issue.
bad.
Further delay is like the the thing is if they delay this time, it's not going to be a short delay for many reasons because Christmas is coming up, right?
Yeah.
And January is always a slump in terms of sales, in terms of that. You don't see big releases happen in January or stuff like that.
mm,
So it's going to be a huge gap. Even the shareholders are going to be like, that's not a good release window you want,
mm,
right?
mm,
So they have to hit that December 10th deadline.
mm.
So it's almost mandatory for them to hit that. And again, I'm like, I don't understand. See, the thing is, it seems like the game is playable and stuff, but it's like it's mostly bugs, which I believe can be patched server side. And they're like, but people are coming to defense saying that no, CDPR's standards for quality is so high, but I'm like, have you played The Witcher Day One? Like, does anybody play? Does anybody remember
I
Witcher
played, I played day one. I mean,
Yeah.
CDPR themselves put out memes saying, it was a very recent meme where, not even a meme, they did this in Nightwire episode 4, I believe, where they said, oh, you can call your car anywhere. And then they showed a picture of V standing in front of the Witcher 3 house with the car on top of the house. Like, it's a reference to what happens to Roach when you call him. Like,
No, I want to take this point. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but like Witcher 3, the people who claim that CDPR has a really high standard
I
when
mean,
it
they
comes to
probably
their games,
haven't played the game of Witcher 3
yeah,
properly.
but because the game still has tons of issues, like still Roach is still bugged as hell. He
That way.
still walks in front of the door, stays there. You have to go like far away and recall him and all that. It's not true. I think you know what? Let the game come out.
No,
People will see it for
I
themselves.
understand when they say CDPR has a very high bar for quality. I think they're talking about certain things that maybe we are not thinking about the same things.
Yeah, the quest
Because,
designs, the
yeah,
gameplay,
yeah.
and the entire
And I
loop of it.
completely
Like, yeah,
agree. I completely
yeah, I
agree.
agree. I agree as
I
well.
agree. Ideally, I mean, it's like in defense of this, when they say that they don't want to release a buggy
Hmm.
game and stuff like that, right? That's
That's
not
not true.
true.
That's not true.
And
Yeah.
that we can fix, and that is most definitely something we are willing to excuse because these bugs can constantly get fixed server side,
The thing
unless
I think so, the biggest problem with CDPR with all of this is the fact that they decided to release all 5 versions, I guess, at the same time, and that kind of put even more stress than they initially had to release the game, and that's biting them in the ass right now. I believe that even if they do delay another time, I don't believe at least some parts will be delayed. Like, I think the PS5, again, I'm being very optimistic here, and I think the game is probably out to be released for PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC.
PC.
I don't think it's probably, maybe they're definitely having a hard time with the last gen. And if they're smart, they can just release it, the games that are already ready for the next gen and the current gen. There's a, for people in India, they don't realize is that there is a large base of console players on PS4 and Xbox One who will be angry. But I think, I mean, it's how you weigh. What's the worst that can happen? Do you delay it for everyone, or do you delay it for such a section of people, right? And that's me thinking: is there a delay even necessary after this? Because obviously, they said 21 days is enough. And what, again, I'm quoting the studio, one of the main studio guys, which is, we're not comfortable with the date, but confident, which kind of shows that they probably have to crunch and there will probably be bugs. I just hope that even if there are no delays, there are no progression stopping bugs, because that will be insane, right? If
I am,
they,
that's my fear. I think there's a game breaking bug that they're having trouble with.
yeah. I mean, I
Like, you
don't think
guys
there is
remember I was.
I don't think there's game breaking, but I think there are many.
I
Right.
mean, considering the scale of the game, I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah.
there were
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
multiple.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that they will be discovered on day one, because with a
yeah.
game this large, you'll need a lot of days to figure out where the exact bugs are, and you can't even replicate them properly because you'll need certain parameters to replicate them.
Yeah, that's why I
So
am like
yeah.
kind of, excited, scared, both of these things at the same time. This is not GTA. People who are going to go into this game thinking this is GTA will either be sorely disappointed or sorely overwhelmed, right? Like, you will get the number of stats and stuff. Not even Witcher will come close, right? Witcher
Yeah.
barely had any depth to it, honestly speaking.
It didn't.
And,
It
and,
didn't
and I
actually.
love the game. I'm just saying, I love the game. It didn't have depth. It had depth in the quest design. It didn't have depth in the RPG abilities of, if you went alchemy in the game, by level 14, I believe you could just become OP, right? And no one could kill you. because you would have basically you would have poison regeneration. So if anyone attacks you with poison attacks, you'd basically gain health instead of losing it, right? You could make the game like that. This is not going to be a game where you can just min-max your way out, and I don't believe most gamers around me have min-max Witcher 3 or even completed that game for that matter. This will be a very overwhelmingly daunting game. Like the amount of approaches to quests, the amount of approaches to level design which they showed off. One simple thing that I know for a fact that the developers discussed in the last Nightware episode podcast after the episode is that something that most people don't know in the game is, you know how in GTA you can just jack cars, like you can just steal cars. You can't do that in this game. In this game, if you want to steal cars, you will either need a good strength stat, or else you can't just open the door. Simple. Like if the car is going by and if you don't have high enough stat, you'll probably just like fall down if you try to, you know.
Again, going back to the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Yes. And you guys saw how they will showcase hyperclass cars, right? Which is the very high-end cars. It's very likely you can't even get those cars if you don't have a high intelligence for the hacking requirements. Right, because it's very likely you will not be able to steal those cars by just punching through the window and going in. It gets to 2077. Those are supposed to be techs, the wholly functional gadgets that are just moving gadgets, right? It's not just a simple car where you have an ignition key and then start and just run away. So I am very interested, and I can see so many ways because of the level of depth that's in the game. I can see so many ways it can go wrong already.
It can go, as in so many ways, the audience can probably get frustrated and drop it and realize that the wait was probably not worth it, which I hope that's not the case.
I don't think so. I think this is going to be a very unique experience, and the hype itself will. See, one thing I'll give to CDPR is even if they don't have a lot of depth going on around their game, they tend to hook people in with the story. That's what they did with Witcher 2 and 3, right? So even if and I don't think that's lacking in, say, Cyberpunk, but even if there's overall shallow gameplay, I think people will still be interested just simply because of the hype, right? They want to tell their friends, oh shit, have you played Cyberpunk 2077? And it's just a very interesting, gripping story. I don't think even though people like Ubisoft try those edgy stories, we saw Ubisoft attempt with Watch Dogs 1 a very edgy R-rated story, but they barely could. Like Watch Dogs 1 barely had any story. Okay, it was a very basic revenge plot.
Watch Dogs 2 had a pretty good story.
I disagree.
Like the amount.
I disagree. If your main character is someone going around hitting people with a yo-yo, I don't know how much of a story building you're doing in real life. See, see, here's the thing. If you're going full anime, go full anime, right? Don't stay in the middle. Just go full anime. Give that yo-yo fire attacks or something. Like, yeah, or just stay realistic. Watch Dogs for me feels like in an uncanny valley of unrealism and realism, which is fine. It's its own game, but I don't believe anything like Witcher 3 had a very mature story at certain times. It had the Red Baron, like the Bloody Baron quest line, had a very mature story, had a very gripping story, in fact. We have not seen anything like that in modern day AAA title RPG games, I believe. So I think because of that badge of honor that CDPR can at least, I have no doubt in this particular place for their quest design, and they have said they're going. And they said basically Witcher 3 was playing ground for them, and they're going overboard with Cyberpunk for quest design. So I am really hyped, particularly. So I think people will play it. I don't think that will ever be an issue of people playing it, but I do think they will take a lot of PR hit, especially investor hits, which they're already taking with the delays, more so than the consumers. I think people will still buy the game even if it's 6 months down the line comes out, right? People are still excited for Star Citizen, which has
Yeah.
we are never seeing that game, right? I think people can wait 6 more months for Cyberpunk and still buy it. I don't think that will happen, but I think where they will take hit, where Star Citizen, for example, does not need to care about, which is investors. They're a publicly traded company and they already lost 25% of their share value. This is the lowest value since April, to give into
Mhm.
perspective. And they don't want delays, obviously, it's like billions of dollars for them. So yeah, I think that's all my perspective in all of this.
So this is what I wanted to say. It's not going to affect the quality or anything of this current thing, but I want to know what it bears for the future development or whatever happens, right? I just hope CDPR kind of, it's a lesson in humility, right? Like, don't make statements like there will be, we promise no crunch, we promise that thing, this is
Yeah.
gone, right? Don't make bold statements if you can't follow through on that. I think
Hmm.
they've learned the lesson in humility. I hope, like, I wonder what this means for the next productions and next projects, because that is going to be scrutinized far harder
Yeah,
than what's currently happening.
yeah,
So
of
that's
course.
interesting. Hmm.
I don't think Cyberpunk multiplayer will have this kind of crunch, because I
Hmm.
think they will take their sweet time with it. Though they did give a 2-year time period for that, so I wonder how much exactly is. I wonder if that's enough. Uh, but I believe they're also going to be, they have already going to start after this comes out. They're going to have a small pre-production team for, I believe, a Witcher game, which will be Witcher 4, and it's very unlikely to be around Geralt, which they have repeatedly said Geralt's story is done basically. Uh, we might have repeating characters like Siri come in, but it's, and I will actually be honestly hyped if we can just play a random Witcher, right? You can just create your Witcher, and that will be insane if they actually go with that storyline. So yeah, you're right. If they do not, if they are not careful with how they make their next game, and if they have similar stuff going on, I think even the gamers who are defending them right now will be like, oh no, wait, we saw this happen before, right? And this time it's very public. It's a lot of people. I mean, there are obviously people who are defending TCDBR, and that's fine. I have seen enough people to understand that there's a sizable chunk of people who are completely hyped about this game, who do not care about the crunch, who are like, no, it's just an extra day. And no matter what the developers say, they'll be like, some developer got paid the $480 for a month of work.
Nine, no,
For,
it's nine. It was 580 or
yeah,
900, something like
Oh,
that. But
for
it was very
$30
low.
very
is what
low.
it was.
Huh.
It
It
was.
was
It,
bit
like you
less.
could barely live in Warsaw with that much
No,
money.
it was
It
basically
was.
less than what the if you wanted to live with rent in Warsaw, it was less than that
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But she was in facial animation. Facial animation is not some. It doesn't matter if you're an intern or whatnot. Facial animation is a high level task, right? It's not something that's just randomly anyone will know. So just, yeah, the stories like that are coming out, and people are like, no, she was just an intern. She got paid what she deserved. Blah
Also,
blah.
I heard this defense was like this was back in Witcher 3's time. So I'm like, yeah, as if that's changed all of a sudden. Like
Yeah,
it's fine because it was in Witcher 3. It's like
I mean
I mean
that's
there's a
just
lot of
lame.
defenses. None of them make sense to me
I
personally.
mean, see, I understand some people saying that. I honestly do, because there are a lot of people who are saying that even we work an extra day sometimes when we have to hit deadlines and stuff. What people do not understand is yes and no. We, in most other labors, s- even IT labor, the crunch is never this long, and this has been reported in there's a book by Scryer on this. In IT, the crunch tends to be very last minute and very, over a month or two max, or three. Crunch in video games goes on for years, is what people don't understand. Naughty Dogs has been known for this before CDPR. BioWare, I believe, has been known for this at one point. Several companies have been known for this. and they've had to eventually rectify all of this to make sure that they're doing it better. I hope CDPR does better, because if they don't, they'll definitely get a lot more backlash next time than they're getting right now. And I think they're still going to sell out a lot of stock, like a lot of games and a lot of things, and they're going to be safe as a company. But if this repeats again and again and again, not only are the investors and they're going to get a lot of bad public PR, but good talent will leave from the studio, which will hurt
Not the
them.
studio. Good talent will just lose hope in the video game industry and just
Yeah,
get
Yeah.
laid off.
which is something you don't want as a gamer, honestly. You don't
I
want
mean, I'm
good people to leave.
personally, I'm seeing a pattern here between what you said regarding CDPR and BioWare is that both these games were in pre-production for a long time. Management did not know what to do with their talents and what to do with the game, frankly, and they just rushed it out the door with a lot of crunch in the way.
Hmm.
And whereas BioWare doesn't, where BioWare has the backing of EA's financials, like however you want to talk about it, but for CDPR, there's a huge portion of money coming in from the Polish government itself. So
Right.
I don't think the higher ups in the company or the investors, they particularly care about the money aspect in that sense, like the funding aspect. They only care about the profit. So I don't think the crunch in CDPR will be solved by just, like Jason Schreier posting about it or James Sterling commenting about it or anything. Like they need a wake up call, some sort of.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would. Otherwise, I don't see a
I
way
think
where they
I
change
think
all of
I
that.
think I think this is the wake up call. Anyway, I do think this is the wake up call for CDPR. I
Yeah,
think this last delay was like, oh shit, right, for them.
I think it was one
Um,
too many.
yeah. I think even
For
they
them.
realize it. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move
Let me
on. I
take
think
this last shout out to Insomniac again. Wholesome devs hit their deadlines and no crunch.
yeah,
I'm gonna plug them in.
Santa Monica.
Hmm?
right,
Santa Monica. They
No,
also
no.
delivered a
Yeah,
few
Santa
games.
Monica as well. Why not?
right. Um, so before we move into the next topic, Arnab, are you there with someone in the room?
No, it's from downstairs.
Oh, okay, take it. Cool. Take it. Fine, because I can hear the entire conversation.
Yeah. It's kind of weird.
Take it. Fine.
I have to tell my parents to move away. So hold on.
Go ahead. You can do that. I'll just edit this out with the magic of editing. We can talk about Facebook VR now. You take over for a little while. I think
Hopefully
you.
it's fixed.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, let's talk about the next topic. Enough about Cyberpunk. I really want to play the game, and I really don't want the devs to have crunch, but they're having crunch anyway, and I believe the Cyberpunk is coming December 10th now. Hopefully that's true. Otherwise, I mean, even if it's not coming, we have to move on to the next topic. Let's talk about Facebook. Facebook and VR, specifically Oculus. There was a very interesting article by Kotaku, which I think completely encapsulates my views on what Facebook wants to do with VR. And I believe I have said this to a lot of people who have been. So, to give you guys an idea, I've been playing on VR games ever since it came out. I played VR initially for the first time in 2016, I believe, which was also the Oculus Rift, right? The first VR that I tried was the Oculus Rift, and then I tried HTC Vive later down the year. And ever since Facebook bought Oculus, I was like, yeah, it's going down the drain now. And Kotaku's headline is basically like Facebook bit for VR is not about gaming, but about data. And I think that that entire headline, you don't need the article after that. This is one of those headlines that you can read and you're like, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
Again, we
yeah,
know how
Udit.
much of our data is taken by Facebook, and we know how Facebook values our privacy, right?
Yeah.
And just the power of VR is like the concept of the technology of VR gets so much data of your movement, right? At it was some 90 movement, like there are some 90 data points sent every second. uh, on the Oculus, and within a span, the number of types of movement that it records is the magnitude. Because I saw some videos on the Oculus. What was the thing called again? Oculus
Dev thing.
Quest 2.
Oh
Was
yeah,
it?
yeah. You're talking about the game.
Yeah, again, whatever they say, the thing is key, they wanted the pixel details of it to be really, really, really good, and that there would be no screen doors, there would be no issues such as those, and that's fine and dandy. But
Mm-hmm.
you realize the amount of behavioral data that it takes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And combined with the data Facebook already has from your account of 10 years. By the way, the major issue here is that you cannot do anything on the Oculus without your Facebook account. That
So weird.
that was the major source of issue, because you can't manipulate, you can't even tweak
So
the
here's the thing.
hardware.
Here's the thing. If you buy a game, so for those of you who don't know, if you buy, so imagine you have an Oculus at your home. You bought an Oculus with your hard-earned money. You have a PC. You bought games on the Oculus on your Facebook account. If you were to someday delete your Facebook account, all your games and all your purchases in the Oculus will also go away, and you cannot retrieve them in any way. And Facebook is like, just the current answer is sorry.
Oops. We didn't think you would want to delete your Facebook account.
No. They're not. We didn't want to think. They don't care. They're just
I
like
know.
sorry. They didn't
I
say whoops at any time. They're like, why did you delete it if you did not want your games to be gone? Yeah, basically all your purchases are locked to your Facebook account, and if you modify it in any way, it's gone, guys. And they also, I think, I read this somewhere. I have to verify it once more, but basically you cannot share your games in Oculus, which is so weird. Why would, like, every console, if someone told me, basically it's basically Oculus, Facebook telling you, oh, you bought this PC, Arnab, no one else in your house can use it.
power cut.
Oh, great.
Huh.
Yeah. Basically, what Facebook tells you is, if you bought this PC with it, no one else but you can use it. If anyone else uses it, so I'll lock the PC.
Wait. Let me get it. So basically, just as an explanation, I have a Internet Explorer. I have Facebook on my computer. Somebody else can log into my Facebook and log into their Facebook account. How is it similar like that in Oculus? They can't log into their account by using my Oculus.
So they can use their account, but they cannot play any of the games in your account. Yeah, we had a minor inconvenience. Bawalbaba had power cut, so he's gone, and we have Decker in his place. But yeah, we were talking about Facebook VR stuff, basically. Facebook VR, yeah, I'm not sure. But I know there is a locking system. Basically, what Facebook does is they don't want you to share accounts and games, right? So if they see you sharing accounts and games, they'll lock your VR, which is basically what's going on. I have to look it up again.
Very antisocial of a social media platform.
Yeah, it's so weird, because if any other if imagine Sony or Microsoft doing something like that with their Xbox series or like PlayStation, right, or even their VRs, people would be insane, like what the hell is going on, right? And yeah, and just speaking of that, while I know this is not very related, I am kind of surprised at the die down of the entire thing in of VR and AR this generation. We would have thought, like, last generation, even till 2 years ago, I was thinking, AR and VR would be very big this generation onwards. I'm guessing it will be towards sometimes later down the line, where they kind of implement those things, because Xbox's goal seems to be more along the lines of their cloud computing and Xbox Game Pass and all that. But it's interesting to see that the leading person is someone you wouldn't want leading in the VR industry right now, which is Facebook, right? I mean that's accurate. Facebook, basically VR can map everything around you. Not only is it like social media where they can map you whatever you're looking at and see whatever you're interested in, but if you're wearing a VR, it can also map your entire body movements. It can map whatever you're seeing in the world, right? it has sensors in there. So yeah, for a company like Facebook, who is very well known around the entire world for basically data gathering, one way or another from the consumers, and then not even caring about the fact that if their data is affecting political systems around the world, you don't want someone like that to have your data. I mean, and having them in, I don't think they'll make it because they are not a gaming company and they seem to be making very shit games. Facebook, which is thank God. But yeah, I'm like thankfully they're not making good games. I wouldn't want a cult that CDPR has for Facebook. Imagine that.
That's
Like
going to be hard to achieve right
like
now.
that's apocalypse level of stuff happening.
You
CDPR
are
cult for Facebook. Oh my God. When the thought
no,
is
that's
scary.
Cyberpunk happening right there. So the thing is, I think we had the same discussion back in 2016 itself, where you were more optimistic about VR, and I was always a little more skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in terms of gaming, at least, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it, at least in this generation, to explode as much. I always saw it as an iterative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how Sony with the PSVR, they were struggling, but they got their feedback from developers,
Mm-hmm.
and they will probably iterate more with PSVR, where they've said that they'll be taking VR more seriously in the second gen,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a constant. The reason that is slow is because you need constant back and forth feedback from the developer side, right? What struggles they are having, what kind of games they want to make, and how you want to develop your software compared to their requirements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Facebook has a completely different approach. We just need to get as much data as possible from people. So limitations are a lot less, right? The demands are just, it's a very clear goal. We want to get as much data, we want to get as much body movement and behavioral stuff,
Yeah, and they
or
want to
whatever.
sell it. For anyone who is like thinking, what will they do with data? There is no doubt what Facebook will do with data. There's like evidence from the last some 14 years. All Facebook does with the data is sell it. Okay. Don't expect them
Yeah,
to, like, they'll probably try to brainwash you with ads and stuff, but that's not Facebook doing it. That's Facebook allowing tools, making tools for other people to use their data with whatever they want to do it with the data, right? So while Facebook will not brainwash you, there are other companies that's just more than willing to take the data Facebook gathers and then do whatever they can to
and Facebook
push
wants no
advertise.
accountability over that.
Yeah, Facebook is like, bro, it just sold it. We don't care what they. Yeah, it's like a very nonchalant approach that Facebook has with data. They're like, it's gone. It's not in our hands anymore.
क्या कर सकते हैं अब जो हो गया सो हो गया
So yeah, I think that's Jo ho gaya so ho gaya is the best way one can define Facebook's approach to data, I guess.
I mean, so I'm actually kind of interested. Like, I'm actually kind of glad it got hacked, you know, and that,
Oh
people
yeah.
are like,
So for people, what Udit is basically saying is that the Oculus Rift thing got hacked as well, and now the hackers basically separated the whole Facebook integration into Oculus Rift, so they can just log in without logging into Facebook and just use the VR
neurons.
as it is supposed. I think that was
True, much
bound to
love,
happen. I think that was bound to happen. You push this thing enough, and there'll be independent people who are like, yeah, no, right? So yeah, that's interesting, and I'm kind of glad. I wasn't glad CDPR was failing. I am kind of glad Facebook is failing. Let me just put it that way. So yeah, what is your ending thoughts on this? But I
No, I
just
just
wanted to bring this topic because I thought it was, even though we are so far apart from the VR world these days, next gen has no glimpse of VR or AR, even though Microsoft has such an amazing product like HoloLens. I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because it's very
no,
interesting to me that Facebook has Oculus.
no, I mean, it is very important for us because now that you've seen, video game as an industry have become the pioneers of technology which bleed into other aspects, right?
Uh-huh.
Whether you compare VR, whether you compare, even movie making, right? The way Mandalorian is being
Oh
shot,
yeah,
the
yeah,
technology
yeah,
is being pioneered by video games, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think it does. The topic is relevant to whatever we discuss. As far as Facebook is concerned, I just do believe that this issue actually makes people push for regulations more, as far as how much Facebook can breach, and how much access Facebook, how much control Facebook has over your privacy. Not that that stopped them. Before, I heard like there was certain times where Facebook got out of certain things by giving like $550 million, where I think it was a Dutch thing which kind of set regulations over it. But I do believe more and more people like push
Yeah.
for the right to have ownership to tweak their own hardware, and have the freedom that now that I've purchased it, I own. Because we're heading into the issue with us heading into the cloud direction and this kind of direction is that we're not owning things. We're having the license to certain things, and that we're paying the company to. It's almost like rent, right? We're paying people for the ability to keep it, and someday that can just disappear, right? No longer is that ownership coming to us,
Hmm.
right? And with this kind of breaches, like with this requirement of you being constantly logged in with Facebook, that is becoming more and more a scary proposition that I'm worried of.
Right. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but in for all intents and purposes, Facebook does not seem to be doing this very well, which is probably good news.
Mhm.
They don't know how to make games, that's for sure. They haven't made any good game. Quest 2, I think, is the only, and that's because they bought the studio, I believe, and some of the lead designers and stuff. So they don't have like really high, they don't have anything along the lines of Cyberpunk coming out anytime soon, which is great. And Oculus is also not the topmost VR model. Like there was a time when it was one of the top VR models to get, but since HTC Vive and since Valve came out with Index, I don't think it's like even close to that. Like Index is just very straight much open source. That's the hardware you buy, and then you can do whatever you want with the hardware. The Valve will not stop you. Um, so yeah, that's the approach you generally want. And we have seen really good game in VR, which is specifically Half-Life Alyx, and then another game called Boneworks, I believe,
Mm.
which are two very great games. If you guys can just check out videos on those games. I think you'll love it. If you ever get VR, anyone, then those are the games you should probably try first. These are just full blown experiences that have like just too much to offer, and just it's just a very different way of playing games than what everyone is used to. And I think yeah, I'm just kind of disappointed. I don't know if disappointed is the right word. I just expected more from the entire VR thing. Like, but you did say it's a more iterative process. I imagine VR and AR to make a comeback maybe 3 years down the line again for
Definitely.
PS5 and Xbox Series X. I definitely think Microsoft has a golden goose somewhere with that HoloLens, which kind of just disappeared out of like
I
public
believe the
view.
interesting thing that's going to happen is I think the acquisition that Sony did of Insomniac was because another thing because Insomniac was experimenting so much with the VR. They
Hmm.
made quite a lot of small titles like Edge of Nowhere and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
which was released for Vive and stuff. I
Hmm.
think another reason that they completely acquired was because they were pretty experienced with VR. So I think VR will be a huge, even from Microsoft and from Sony,
Yeah, yeah,
and you see the more tailored and more structured approach to video game development,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's the in this gen the development was just like how video game development was in early stages of PC, right? People just experimenting things and just making things work, right? You will
I,
see more
hmm.
structured development in the next gen, which is actually exciting, and I'm actually excited for VR for the
Hmm.
next gen.
I have just two things more to add to this. You talked about Sony. I want to mention that Sony's PSVR is completely compatible with PS5 as a
Hmm.
hardware set, and a lot of their games will also be compatible with the PS5. So, not all of them. I think some games are not, but a lot of those games are, which shows that they haven't completely given up on the entire VR thing. For at least Sony hasn't, right? And as for what was the second thing I wanted to talk about? I forgot.
It'll come to
Weird.
you.
Um, Something related to Insomniac, I believe. But yeah, I just wanted to say how Sony hasn't completely given up on VR. So we'll probably see something along the lines soon.
Their issue was they
Oh
started
yeah,
with a very cheap hardware.
I remember what my second point is. The SSDs in both the consoles is gonna be a boon for VR. VR
Exactly.
always had one. So for to give you a very layman's perspective on how VR works, in VR you can see more just because you're seeing with your eyes and it's in your screen, right? To give you an idea, on a PC you're generally playing with either a 1080p monitor or like maybe max 4K monitor, right? And you're seeing whatever is in the distance in through that window, you can say. In VR you have technically two windows, which is right smack right close to your eyes, like this. And those two windows are, first of all, one of the main things that they have to do is run above 90 fps. There is no way they can run below 90 fps because you will get motion sickness otherwise. This is someone who has played enough VR games to know and tell you, and has researched on it, right? I have the first hand experience as well with when I'm saying this. So that's one of the main things that you have to talk about. The 90 fps, the SSD will obviously help because it's just speeds thing up for you. And the second thing is it has to have high resolution to make sure that the immersion is complete. Ideally you want to have 4K so that you cannot see any pixels at all. How pixels work is, if those pixels are closer to your eyes, they're more visible. So to make sure that you can see the whole picture and not distinguish each pixel and have like clarity over the picture, you need more and more pixel as you're bringing the screen closer to your eye, or making the screen bigger for that matter, which is why a 4K TV is much more easier to appreciate about what it's offering than a 4K monitor, because the monitor is closer to you. You will not generally understand the difference. I hope all of that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
So you need like a 4K thing kind of going on here, or at least minimum 2K 1080p. If you're playing it at 1080p, HTC, the first iteration was 1080p, and you could basically see single strands of pixel lines if you just focused on the game. And that was never a good experience if you're playing a game, right? You don't want to see black veils. So 2K generally, it's kind of lowers down the whole. That's the screen door effect, by the way, for people who are wondering what Udit was talking about before. And 4K completely removes that screen door effect. So SSD will help with all of this for obvious reasons. SSD allows you to render high resolution at a much lesser impact to hardware, and just allows you to just do faster load times and shit like that, which is very, very necessary for VR. Because if you're playing a VR game at lower than what should I say, minimum requirements, or lower than ideal method,
Ideal requirements.
yeah, it's not like games on a PC or a console where it just hangs and you're frustrated. No, you'll probably fall sick. Right?
Yeah.
You'll probably you'll have motion sickness and you'll just fall or something. You might even get injured physically because you will just lose balance. So yeah, playing VR games subpar is actually dangerous to you. Which is something the developers very well understand. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting when and if these things come back, and how the next gen consoles will also take advantage of the hardware to showcase VR games and AR games. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Do you want to say anything else on the topic?
That was my closing thoughts on it. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Then let's move on to, I guess, again, this is the very small topic. Arnab would have loved this, but gambling and FIFA. Yeah. FIFA basically. So, give you guys just EA basically got fined. EA loot boxes got said that they're gambling in Netherlands and a few other countries. And they basically said, Netherlands has said, like, if you guys keep continuing this, you'll have to pay a fine of some millions of dollars.
Lovely.
And that's great because you don't want loot boxes. Yeah, that's about it in the topic. I think you can take over.
No, I mean, this has been tradition for us. Like, this topic has never left us. And I'm like, even in 2020, we're still stuck at EA's scummy practices. I think there were laws. I think the law was key. Anything that any game that has some premium thing that people can get as reward has to have a license, and EA was basically operating without a license. And
Hmm.
I don't know how they were getting by, and it's good that they were caught. Because the issue with FIFA is it's not just cosmetics that you get out of those loot boxes. You get actual players
Hmm.
who can affect your gameplay,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is which is severely thwarting the thing. And it's already again, this is a fully purchasable game with a proper $60 price point, and then with microtransactions so asinine that they change the way that your game behavior is done, operating without a license in that country, basically breaching their laws. That those are like layers of scumminess just like piled on top of each other. And yeah, man, I'm glad that Dutch, I think even back then we covered an issue of Netherlands actually trying to push back against this.
I think
And
so. I think we did cover something along the lines. I remember a few months back, this was an issue where we kind of said EA will probably get sued because of the loot boxes. I also want
yeah,
to mention how EA's CEO, I believe, asked for a bonus and was rejected by the shareholders because they were like, no, why do you want a bonus? This was also not a few months back. So I think we discussed that in the one of the podcasts itself. I remember, which is just funny. Yeah, a bonus fact for anyone who wanted to know more scummy practices of EA. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, I'm just glad they called. I hope that these regulations. The thing is, the issue is ki the rules are different for different countries.
hmm,
So EA kind of gets away with it in most places. I hope that this case kind of brings to light other countries, like the way, like, hey man, this is not okay. See, this will only be eradicated if all the countries are taking a solid stand in unison with this,
hmm,
right?
hmm.
I think this is a good start in that sense.
Yeah. I think so. Let's see. It's been a good start for some time actually. EA hasn't been getting this pushback from now. The EA loot box discussion has. I think we have been discussing it 2016, and even before that, this has been going on. So
Is
yeah,
is the entire theme of this podcast just big corporations getting pushed back?
yeah. No, no. We talk about video games as well, which is where we will move to our next topic because I think that's it. I don't know why I put this topic in, but I just wanted to
EA gets what
mention.
they deserve the end.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention how EA basically does what they do all the time, regardless of things. So yeah, what games are we playing today? Udit, let's start with you. I would wish Bawal was here. I know he's playing a lot of games. He
I
always
wish I
plays.
had more to say, but we've just continued playing Phasmophobia.
Okay.
So that's been the thing. The only realization we've got. The thing is, ki they have patched things a bit more, right? Since the last time, I think that I think the fame has helped a bit because now that I realize that
There's
the
no
sound
weird anatomy.
no, they're still there. That's still there. No, but the thing is, like, the ghosts are no longer just like these amorphous beings. They actually have a model that is
Okay.
textured. And
Okay.
right, apparently, when Rahul was watching through the cameras, he actually saw me getting murdered, which had an
Okay.
actual animation rather than just me turning horizontal from vertical. And there are actual sound effects of my neck probably snapping. And
Okay.
the assets are a little more detailed. There's a lot more details on the assets, so you can see how the work is constantly being in process, and I think the feedback is being taken well. So yeah, Phasmophobia continues to impress. The concept is solid, and I hope it just keeps getting more and more polished. The game is fun as hell. I just realized that the thing is key. Every time you take a level, you clear it, you get some money based on the things that you've done, right? But sometimes if you leave certain items there, you're not going to get them back. So sometimes you want to get those items back into your things. If you die, you kind of get insurance bonus. So it's all about managing your expenses for your next hunt. And as and when you level up, this is what I've noticed, it becomes harder to get clues,
Hmm.
right? So it actually gets more challenging. The school level is something that still pisses me off because the map is just so huge, you can get lost, and it just fucks you up, man. I still That school level freaks me out because it's just so huge. It's so easy to get lost, right? I think Mudra was there in the last game we played, and we both were basically glued to each other. Our models were glued to each other because I had the torch and she had the cross, and we were like going like I was with the torch and she was with the cross, and we were glued to each other going because everybody else had died. uh,
Nice.
it's a fun
Uh,
experience.
yeah.
But I want to know your experience because you played a game that I've been wanting to play because this is by a developer that I love, Super Giant
Supergiant
Games,
games.
making
Yeah.
Hades. I want to know your experience.
Yeah. Supergiant games. I played two out of the three games. I played Bastion. I played Transistor. I loved both. Pyre was like a football game, which is very weird, but it had a proper single player campaign. But I just couldn't get into it. It was very appealing, and I would have given it a try, but just I don't think that I will maybe try it out later. But very different. Hades is very traditional and very different in itself. It's traditional because it's a roguelike game, right? Basically, it's a very, if you guys have played a roguelike game, action RPG, it's basically that every run is unique, and every time the idea is to, you're son of Hades, you have to escape hell. That's the basic premise. And every time you die trying to escape hell, you come back into your house and basically then again try to run away from your house and then escape hell. And without spoiling much, this is minor spoiler, even after you escape hell, you can't stay out, right? And then you die and then come back again.
Right.
And that's a basic premise. So people who played roguelike games know this premise. Like dying is a part of those kinds of games, right? It's basically individual runs, procedurally generated caverns and stuff like that, so that each individual runs are interesting and not the same levels. And yeah, it's just about that. But what this game does differently is because of roguelike games and their nature of, how dying works. Like you die every time.
The narrative elements are very strongly thematically tied into the
Yeah.
gameplay, right?
Yeah,
Of roguelike.
yeah. So what I want to say is I haven't seen any roguelike game having a proper single player storyline or any storyline. No, forget single
Yes.
player, right? Because of the fact that these games tend to have a lot of dying. So how do you actually theme that entire place? I know there was a game, I think Children of Morta was it, which
think so,
did a similar thing, but basically whenever your family member died, you would go back to the home, and there was some kind of vampire hunters or something, or like magical creatures.
Yes, you would continue the tradition or stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
stuff like that. So-
That's an interesting way to take
Yeah,
about it.
there are different roguelike games have dealt with storytelling, but I think this is by far the best that I have seen. Because not only does this have a consistent protagonist, it has consistent characters throughout. So I'll give you a basic tidbit. You're son of Hades, Hades is your father, and your pet dog is Cerberus, right? So every time you die and get back home, Hades sitting in his office desk in the entrance will basically scoff at you and be like, "Oh, look who's back, Cerberus!" Like looking at his dog. I told you he'd be back soon enough. Like, and then you go talk to your father, and your father is basically just Hades is like mocking your attempts to go out. He's like, "Why do you even try?" Right? Just stay inside. Stop giving me trouble. Stop ransacking through my domain and shit. Right? And this,
The characters of like the sheer nonchalance, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you fucking do this?
and this entire atmosphere in the game is basically how everyone's just tired of their job. Hades is tired of his job. The son of Hades is basically tired of sitting there at home or domain, whatever you say, hell. He wants to go out. The other people are tired of dealing with these. So one of the characters is Magera, right? Who's one of the first bosses you meet in the game. And she basically becomes your friend. Like you can give her items to build relationships. She'll never stop being the boss, by the way. She'll always come to kick your ass at the first level. She's one of the first bosses you face in the game in each run. So as you keep giving her, basically, you know how in You play Stardew Valley. It's similar to Stardew Valley. You can just give certain items. There's this item called something nectar to each character, right? You get it in your runs, and if you give it to any character, your relationship meter grows with them, and they might unlock new dialogues. They might give you some things. They might, who knows? It different. I have only topped one relationship meter, which was with Sharon, which is the boat guy, dead boat guy.
Sharon, yeah.
Yeah. And he basically, I don't know what it does. He hasn't given me anything special after topping it, but he did give me something in the starting. That's about it. I believe I haven't unlocked most of the things in the game because as you keep progressing, the game keeps slowly opening up and offering more avenues for you to progress with, and also different arms. So there are 6 types of weapons that I've seen in the game till now. I believe there might be 2 more, but I'm not sure, right? And the 6 types of weapons are, there's like a basic sword, giant sword, there's like a shield, there's like a spear, there's a gun, there's a bow, and there is Dante has those punching things, right? Those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And each of them plays differently. So as you are going in each run, you also get boons from Olympus gods. The Olympus gods think that you are trying to escape hell because you want to go to Olympus, which was never your intention. You just want to escape hell because it is like just boring here, which is what's the son of Hades. And then the story kind of goes forward than that.
Right.
It starts out with just you just don't want to stay in hell, right? No other reason. But it kind of develops into more of why you're in hell and why you can't escape and so on. And I haven't finished the game because, and when I say I haven't finished the game, I don't mean I haven't completed a run. I've escaped several times already. But like I said, even after you escape, you come back. And the story kind of progresses after the escape, right? It kind of gives you one more detail of the story after you escape once. Then gives you one more. And the story is just so interesting because this is not only a challenging game, and there is an easy mode to the game, which is again still not easy, but basically what it does is it's god mode, and it's a very simple mechanic. It's basically, and you can play it without this mode, but you can disable and enable it whenever. But what god mode basically does in this game is that every time you die, you get 2% resistant to more any damage. So if you die 20 times, you have 40% resistance to all damage. Right? The game becomes a bit easier for you in that way, right? But the mechanics don't change. The bosses aren't any less harder. It's just that you take less damage the more times you die. The game is like, yeah, if you just want to know the story and you don't want to frustrate yourself, and I've been playing it with that, and I think it's fine because initially I played without God mode on, and I did clear levels, but I realized, when I cleared it twice, I realized, okay, no, I have to clear it probably a lot of times before I get to know what the story is. And then I turned on God mode, and I'm like, I've been having a good time. Apparently they give you basic stats to see how many times you've tried escaping, how many people you've killed and stuff. And I think I've tried to escape 27 times or something. And I haven't escaped 27 times. I'm trying to escape. I believe I escaped 4 times or 5 times in total. 4 times, I believe. And the game is great. Just the mechanics, the music during boss fights, the intensity of the gameplay, the boons. If Zeus gives you a boon, if you have a great sword and you attack, you might have your attacks might fling off, like a lightning might fling off from one character to another and then another, like it might bounce, right? Or you might have a boon that gives you, so you have a cast, you have basically like a throwing object kind of thing. So if Poseidon gives you a boon for that specific item, it basically turns into a wave that goes and pushes enemies back and does insane damage. So the gameplay can change because of the Olympus gods giving you boons, and you getting different boons in each run, and
that
accordingly
is
played.
that Supergiant Games has done well, because even in Transistor, if you see, the way you arrange your items always really made your gameplay feel so unique.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm so glad that they just kept,
I mean, this is a feature of a roguelike game anyway. I would like to mention.
Yeah.
I think I even have a roguelike game in my mobile phone. I'll just let you know what's the name. It's very
Okay, but
popular.
meanwhile, I mean, roguelike games, like particularly, I never gravitated much towards because
Mhm.
it was less to do with the genre. I didn't like have a particular hatred to the genre or anything. But the
It's
thing
very
is, like,
hard. It's very hard,
it
kind
is
of, to get
hard as
into.
well. But right? Like how I really, really like when when a game is very strongly tied with the narrative of
Right.
some, and the nature of the roguelike
Yeah, it's
made it
that there's
harder
no
for
narrative.
that to
Yeah,
happen, right? So this is why I was so interested in Supergiant games, because Supergiant has always been about this
narrative heavy.
strong interweaving of their aesthetics, visuals, story, gameplay. They all are very cohesive, right? By the way, Supergiant games, if you don't know, the creators were like almost school friends, right? The founders were school friends. They grew together in a band, and they found the singer Ashley as well, and they kind of organically grew. They have a very good bond together. That kind of shows in the games as well, right?
Right.
Very
It's just
wholesome.
very unique kind of stories coming out, no? It's
Yeah,
very interesting.
that's because the developers themselves, around the way they formed, right? They resonate on a frequency in everything. So you feel that in the game as well. Everything works very well in tandem, right?
Mhm.
So that's when I realized that they're making a roguelike. I'm like, this is going to be different than what others are, right?
Mhm.
And that's so the setting also makes sense in roguelike. That's something that you've seen with Transistor, you've seen with Bastion. The gameplay and the aesthetics, the music, they've always nailed it. This is why I want to check out, and I'm so glad. All the things that you're hearing, you've been telling me, right? Like, this is exactly what I've always been looking for, to jump into a
Oh yeah,
roguelike.
so roguelike, the mentions the stuff about boons. That's a very common thing in roguelike games. The mobile game that I was talking about is Soul Knight. It's completely
Hmm.
free and anyone can check it out if you guys are saying there's obviously
Oh
no
yeah, I know.
narrative.
With my friends, I think.
Yeah, there's no narrative. It's also co-op, so you can probably play it with friends. It's great fun. But like I've played roguelike games, but I've never played a roguelike game that has narrative heavy. And that's this narrative heavy. I've played very over kind of shallow narrative, just
Just for
sprinkled
you to take it
narrative.
to point A to point B, it's
Yeah, yeah,
enough.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah.
But this is very narrative heavy. They have a proper story going. Like they have proper intrigue going. There's proper twists to the story, and yes, that's the same reason why I am so interested. I haven't played a roguelike game this much before. I have played enough, but I haven't played like I've always preferred when I play. I think of an ARPG game. I would always prefer a single player storyline like Diablo or Path of Exile than something like a roguelike game where you die all the time and you feel like there's no overall progression, right? This has that overall progression. There's also a so every time you die, you go back to home. You have this person called Nix who gives you this mirror, and this mirror basically, regardless of runs, you can upgrade certain things in the mirror that stay with you throughout all
Hmm.
runs. Like
Hmm.
basic stuff like how much health do you start with, how much do you do basic damage, basic stats that they increase, which also helps in the overall long run of the game. Death defines where you can you get basically one extra life if you die once. You can stay alive, and then you get three of those throughout, like if you upgrade it fully. So yeah, and like one thing I want to mention that you mentioned, just the visuals. It looks gorgeous. Oh my god.
Always.
uh Bastion was good looking, Transistor was better, Pyre looks even better, and they kind of outdid themselves with whatever they did here. It's 2D, it's like all hand drawn from what I believe.
And feels
And
so alive, right? Every
it's
asset
just
just
so
like breathe.
vibrant. It's just so vibrant
Yeah.
and colorful. It's just so much red, and it's not Doom style bloody red, right? It's just
There is a
cartoony.
beauty to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best thing I can imagine when I think of this thing is I don't know if a lot of people remember this game, but it was called Guacamole, which had a very Mexican art style. And it has that full. It's just so weird seeing like a very something that I would expect from like a very Mexican style game in a Greece mythology,
Hmm.
and it somehow some weird way just all fits together, right? And looks just gorgeous. That game is just a treat to look at. There are There are no cinematics, I believe. There's no cinematics. There's one cinematic trailer that's out that's not in the game in any form or method. I think, yeah. Uh, but the game looks gorgeous, man. You guys should play it
How's
in
the
just certain
music?
place.
Always with Supergiant games. How's the music?
Oh, it's great. It wasn't as striking as Transistor, I would say. Transistor music was on another level. I wouldn't say it's on
I mean,
that level.
it makes sense because the protagonist there was a singer, so I
Yeah,
suppose.
I mean, they could have done it better, but there are certain points when the music does hit, specifically during boss fights, where the music is just so good. When the metal music hits and you're just fighting an intense boss fight, there's like this thing called boss called a Bone Hydra, and this insane music plays. But yeah, music could have been better, I believe. Again, I'm nitpicking here. I'm not saying it's bad by any means. I'm just
But
saying.
they have had such high standards for
Yeah,
me.
they have had a very high standard, specifically in Transistor. Like they improve the visual quality over time. Like the art style in Hades is the best there ever was in out of all of their games. But if I have to say music wise, I would say it's probably Transistor has the best music
Fair
out of
enough.
all of their games. Yeah, this also has great music. I mean, it's all round. I would say for me, it's like almost a 9 out of 10, even 10 out of 10, I believe. It's just no bugs, so polished, so nice. Plays so fast. There's just a very simple game loop that is very rewarding. Yeah, and there's a very good storyline. There's all the characters, there's multiple characters. There's not one character, by the way. And this is again, like I will repeat, in roguelike games, you don't find characters because you're dying all the time, right? There's consistent characters and they're consistently offer new dialogues every time you die and come back and talk to them and or meet them in your runs. And just there's just a well developing story that's good, and the characters are very interesting to talk to. It's not one dimensional characters. They even fight. You might come home one time and find Nyx and Hades fighting, and you're like hey, and the protagonist me is I'm like I don't like it when they fight. You're like, that feeling, every Indian will know. I think at some point you had their parents fighting and you come home and you're like, I wish they didn't. That's small things, right?
Small
It's
things.
it's there in the game. You will come home sometimes fighting. You come home, you can pet Cerberus and they'll react that way. And you pet Cerberus, Hades will be like, don't spoil the dog. Stuff like that. It's very there's just a lot of character in the game. There are a lot of soul.
Continues to impress. Like,
Yeah.
man,
I would love to see Supergiant games with a lot of money and building like a very high budget game.
I think they'll get there. I just like the small progression
Yeah.
that they're continuing to improve
Yeah.
themselves and staying true to the formula.
It's very interesting, right? When you see someone like CDPR and someone like Supergiant Games, Witcher 1 was a proper RPG, but again, like it wasn't very nice, I would believe. Witcher 1 is not something that you can go back and play today. But Bastion, smaller game,
Still,
it's still great. You will still play it, and it's still probably very. I mean, I played it recently. It's still nice to play it with. It's a bit slower, I believe, compared to their recent titles, even like Transistor or this Hades, of course. But it's still such a gem to play, and you can't go back to Witcher 1 and play it similarly without mods or just fixing a lot of things here and there, and someone telling you to grind through the first two acts and then it gets interesting in the third act. I mean, I agree. It's not a bad game, but then you see someone like CDPR coming out with something like Cyberpunk in.
yeah.
When did Witcher 1 come out? I believe 2003 or 4. 2005, 4 is the first draft of Witcher 1.
Right.
And 2012 was Witcher 2? No, 2012, 11 was Witcher 2.
2010, I think. 2010. 2010 or 2011.
Just look it up. And then 2015 was Witcher 3. So, yeah. And then you see someone like these guys. And then 2020 is Cyberpunk. And then you see someone like Supergiant Games. Bastion came out initially in 2010 or 11, I believe.
Yeah.
And then they are consistently making smaller games, but games that are like getting reviews out like they're a bomb. right?
Again, so I think super gen games, when I see, if I have to make a comparison, what they remind me of is, in animation they kind of remind me of Studio Ghibli, where like we have like this set of people who get along so well, and they all have this vision,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a certain, this is the kind of game that we want to make, let us strike everything as 10 out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like particularly that is a super giant game,
Yeah.
right? Not in terms of, it's not going to push the boundaries of graphic fidelity, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to push certain aspects of gameplay everywhere, but that is going to be a complete product
Yeah,
that
yeah.
completely fits
Oh,
the
for
super,
sure. I am very
right?
excited to see what they make next. And their games are so different as well. Like, even though
Exactly.
like, the Transistor Bastion and Hades are all top-down ARPGs technically, but they all play so differently. Like, Bastion is a single player kind of thing,
Right.
right? Then Transistor is again a single player, but also has this turn-based kind of, not turn-based exactly, but a stop time
Yeah.
battle system, right?
Right.
And then
It's
you
like
have
a
this, yeah, and then you have this, which is like a roguelike, full roguelike kind of ARPG title, which is very different than the other two. And then Pyre is completely different, I believe. Pyre is a completely very, very niche audience, like
very different.
very different game. But they are experimenting, and they're like that niche hipster artist guy, who's like makes nice things and then goes away.
Yeah.
I would
Like,
like
yeah,
to
I made a
see.
game. Bye.
Yeah, I would like to see them make a good big title. And I'm really excited for what they make next. I did play Hades since early access, and it's a gem. I think if you're watching this, if um, you should definitely play Hades. It's great. It's a lovely game, and there's just so much soul to it. It's like the opposite of a Ubisoft game. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? It so much feels like a product of love, right?
Hmm.
I think they're very happy working in this space. I think for me, it kind of feels like they don't even want to go that big. It's like this is the space they want to play in.
I mean,
Uh,
I understand, but as a consumer, I would want to see.
I don't know. I understand your
I,
point. It's just
I
you feel like for them, this is not a limitation that they see. This is like their
yeah,
strength,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree. I agree. I just want to see something. When I say AAA, I don't mean something like Cyberpunk. I just want to see a much bigger game. Eh,
Like Persona 5 type, right? Which is
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is
their
also a big game. I believe I have already spent a good chunk in Hades. I believe I've spent already like 40, 50 hours. 40 hours, I believe. But that's also including the time I played in early access. But this is like, while this game has a lot to offer, this you know what this game has to offer. It's not like Cyberpunk, where after a while you'll find something that's completely unexpected, like, right?
loop is done. It's
Yeah, the loop
basically
is
just
done. The loop is done. The core loop things will change here and there. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. That's about it. We have had some technical issues with Udit coming from mobile because he has just lost internet, and Bawalbaba is absent because he has no power. Indian problems. But thanks for watching. We will have a very interesting guest next week. Just a personal update. I've also been helping Steve's dad with his own podcast, so I'll be appearing there sometime now and then. Apart from that, yeah, interesting guest next week, and we will have more content for sure coming out of this channel sooner than rather than later, because I've kind of sorted out a few things in my own life. Udit, I think you're also making content.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, as soon as I'll be, a quick note, I'll be moving to Hyderabad in a month, and I'll get my setup ready. And then, yeah, I'll start out with vlogging and then see where it goes. But I am planning to come back into content since I
Great.
think it's high time.
Great. I think it'll be fun. I want to make content because I don't see a lot of good gaming content in the country. Like, I see a lot of gaming streamers, but I don't see people making lore videos and stuff like that around video games. Something that I would personally enjoy seeing and making. So yeah, reviews also. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks again, Udit, for coming to the podcast. Let's do movie stuff also in the future. I think we can try. we can maybe
Always up for
incorporate movie stuff in the Bongshot podcast itself, because we haven't exactly said this is a gaming podcast. Other than it's not in the title for sure. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye bye. See ya, guys.